I think it's all part of a cooling in relations between the US and Russia. Ironically enough, since the Alaska summit, we've already seen, for example, that President Trump imposed pretty high tariffs on India, and he said that that was in part due to India's continued purchases of Russian oil, and we saw India at least announce that it was going to ratchet back some of those purchases. China is the other big purchaser, and there's a big question mark there, I think, because Trump and Xi Jinping have only just really overcome some of their differences in their trade relationship, and if the US were now to go after China with big tariffs related to Russian oil, that risk, of course, ratcheting up those tensions again.
What sort of damage could this do potentially to Russia's economy?
Oh, really quite serious damage. I mean, the Russian government relies on oil and gas sales for something like, I think, 25% of their income now. We've already seen that some of that income is beginning to decline in recent weeks, and the Russian budget is already in deficit. So anything that deprives the Russian government of more income is going to be immediately felt on the bottom line and felt further down the line on Putin's ability to wage war.
You've been in Ukraine just in the past few days. In terms of what their priorities are now and how they are managing the war that is almost 4 years old now.
Yes, it's dragging on, and obviously that impacts on resilience and their ability to resist. But they seem quite determined, and when we met President Zelensky, he was making the point that what they really need is more air defense. They really need European confirmation of funding so that they can support purchases of weapons, support the economy. They're determined to get through the winter, but to be able to do that, they have to be able to resist Russian strikes on their energy infrastructure, which are causing regular power cuts in Kiev and elsewhere throughout Ukraine.
And this is, I suppose, an interesting strand of Ukraine's strategy, as well as the continuing attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure as well. How significant are they, and how should we see them in the broader efforts that Ukraine is trying to make at this stage of the war?
Yes, I mean, Ukraine is very directly targeting Russian energy assets like refineries, precisely to do what the sanctions are also aimed at doing, which is to deprive Russia of the ability to generate income. They're very clear that they want to continue these actions. They're developing long-range domestic missiles which will allow them to target more deeply into Russia. And there's something of an energy war going on, really. We see Ukraine striking at refineries, and we see Russia striking at energy infrastructure to try and freeze Ukraine into submission. So it's going to be a long and intense winter, and who prevails will largely be determined, I think, by how much Ukraine can get defences for their own infrastructure.
In terms of the progress then of the legislation in the US and how quickly all of this might happen, as you say, if it is all about the winter and getting through the winter, I think the EU has 19, if not 20 packages of sanctions against Russia. So it's also about the speed and how effective it is in delivering these sanctions.
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt sanctions are having an effect on the Russian economy, but it's a slow burn, right? It takes time to have an impact for each set of sanctions. But the key package for Ukraine in terms of financing is the decision next month whether to provide loan funding based on frozen Russian assets. That decision was put off last month. President Zelensky was very clear in our interview that that's crucial for Ukraine to get through the winter, so they need a clear decision next month.